hello everyone out there in, I guess, internet land, for want of a better term. You're here for the LDUH monthly read for October, which was my pick this time round, although as we kind of did, it was kind of a joint Bailey pick, so that was useful for us. We read, now I'm going to try and see how it goes. It's going okay so far, sort of fading in and out. I'll trying my best. There we go. It's The Relentless Moon by Mary Robinette Kowal, which is the third novel in the series. However, it is just one of several pieces of fiction that she has written in this universe. So I think most people here, everyone here has read the first two, yes?
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Cool. So obviously I had a physical copy that I read, but did everyone? No. Elizabeth, you didn't have an Audible copy. You did
I read an ebook.
Excellent.
Yep.
And I think everyone else did audio?
Yes.
Excellent. Cool. So I won't be able to talk about her narration performance again, but I'm sure everyone else will. So, all right, I'll get started with my quick thoughts. This is my favorite of the series so far. I really, really loved it. It was a very quick read, had lots of elements from different kind of genres that I really enjoy, and it's just a world that I have really enjoyed being in since we read the first one. I'm a big fan of obviously sci-fi. I think everyone knows that, but also alternate histories, particularly alternate histories of the 20th century, are particularly something that I like to read. So this ticked lots and lots of boxes for me, and it was good to come back. I will admit at the start, I felt very silly partway in, where I didn't know this was set in a different, it wasn't set immediately after book two. And I was expecting this to be another Elmer book, and it wasn't. And so I was very confused for the first chapter or so before I was like, oh, okay, I get it. So I'm acknowledging that up front that I was a bit silly. But yes, I loved it. 5 stars. Yay. Who wants to go next? I'll pick if no one wants to volunteer. All right. I will go this corner around clockwise. So, Bobby.
Okay. Oh, I will not take a drink then.
I will.
Yeah, everyone else take a drink now. I really enjoyed it. This is my third time reading through it. So just like disclosure for anyone who is watching, or if Mary Robinette Kowal happens to fall into this for some reason and decides to spend 2 hours listening to us blather very excitedly about her books. This book came out literally weeks after I lost my mother, and so the first time I read it, I was so excited that it came out, because I was like, oh my god, I can lose myself in something. And so I just listened to it. So I apologize ahead of time if I get emotional. It's all good stuff, because I went back and re-listened, and then I listened to it again with David, my partner, because he normally we listen together if we're doing an audiobook, but timing schedules didn't work out. So I listened to it, and then we spent the last week listening again. So I've heard it 3 times and connected with it slightly differently each time around, but always amazingly, very close with what's going on, and just loved it for different reasons, but all each time. So, and like you, Matt, I love alternate histories, particularly ones from any time from turn of the century, like early 1900 all the way through until about 1985 or so. I get really excited about alternate histories. So this one's one of my favorites. Can't wait for the next one. I've been looking, by the way. We don't know when the next one's coming out. Come on.
I thought it was next year.
It says 2022. I'm not sure if it has a more specific date than
that. The thing is there are different titles for that book, so we don't know which one is coming out. Like so I could find something from Tor when just before this one came out, saying, oh, the next one was one title name and it's coming out next year, and then that title is no longer to be seen anywhere.
Ooh,
really, other than on Goodreads, and now it's got another title with a slightly different publication date. So, yeah. So if anyone else can figure that out, please tell me, because I'd like to see it in my calendar.
Maybe she just had a really tough COVID time, like everybody else.
Yeah, no, understandably so. Like,
Yeah,
for sure.
She did mention that the deadline of this one went whizzing past, so maybe that happened
she had
again.
some family stuff come up, which I'm
Yeah.
happy to make allowances for whatever my author needs, like feed my artists, keep them happy so they keep making good stuff. But yeah, it's nice to have some certainty too, even if it's just we don't know when it's coming out. Shut up and leave us alone.
Awesome. Thank you. Kirsten.
I really enjoyed it as well. I was also surprised that maybe I didn't read, maybe it was in the blurb and I didn't read it, I don't know, but I didn't realize it was going to be a different main character and set concurrently with the Mars one that we read last time. But I was at first I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this as much, but I did actually really enjoy it. I liked the whole it was almost like a murder mystery on the moon, like like that whole it's that small group of people in one place and one of them's an imposter and which one is it, and trying to figure that out.
It's literally Among Us. It's
Yeah.
literally
Yeah,
Among Us.
And because we did the murder mystery game the other week and it was like, man, this is just like doing a murder mystery. I have no idea who is the traitor, and every time I think I know, something else happens and it changes my mind. So I did enjoy that, and I did enjoy Nicole's character, and I thought I thought it was really good.
Excellent. Sarah, you've got a mouthful. Do you want me to skip for a second? No. Okay. I was interpreting that, but
yeah, my mute button on this doesn't seem to control this, so that's why I have to keep coming in. So I loved it. This was my second listen through, I should say. I listened to it a few months ago before you picked it, Matt, because I didn't know when it was going to happen. And then, but I was like fine listening to it again. And I'd been listening to a book of around about the same length of time, and it was one of those things like, oh God, this just kind of drags a bit. And this one just was like, it was like, oh my God, I'm like 4 days in and I'm 2/3 of the way done, so obviously just pick it up again. 5 stars. I'm probably with you, Matt, that this is probably my favorite. I think in no large part that I really love the character of Nicole. I think she's so interesting and layered in her background, and we'll get into that. And I also was really happy to spend time with Lynn Holmes. I love them from the first two. So to hang out with Eugene and Myrtle, I'm here for that. I really, really hope, but I know it's also kind of hard for Mary Robinette Kowal, but I would love to get one from Myrtle's perspective. But I don't know if the author feels comfortable. I don't know. I hope. Or Helen, being back with Helen. I love being back with Helen. Like, it's just like old friends, right? I loved being with our old friends. So it was great. And Kirsten, as you said, the mystery. And what was interesting, and Bobby, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this. The second time round, like knowing things and just marveling at the author's execution and laying those like seeds, but also like you can see, there's just a mastery there that is just, there's so much to learn from of how well she had the threads going, and really interesting with the world of the moon. Of course, we're in the larger world that she's already set up, but the world of the moon, especially after we've all read Artemis. I'm not sure if everybody on this call did Artemis, Andy wears Artemis, but being on a moon base, which I think was also called, this one's called Artemis as well, maybe?
We need to talk about that later.
Okay, good. Seeing how the different bases and the different time periods and an acceleration of tech, etc. So it was really cool. So I really like that aspect of someone taking the time to explain how the habitat works, or how they've made concessions for what, like the fact that they've got to get all the materials up there, and so the doors aren't doors, they're all that kind of stuff. Really liked it. So much to unpack and love, and I'm sure we'll never do all of the things that we love justice, but yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you. Elizabeth.
So I'm a big reader of fantasy, science fiction, and romance. I try really, really hard not to get sucked down into mystery and crime, but this one just took me down. because I could really dive into those genres. I love a good mystery and a good crime, and so this was just delightful. I think I'm with Matt. I think I like this one the best of the book so far. I appreciated the way it was concurrent with the second book, because and the new narrator, because it's been a while since I read those first two books, and this was super accessible. I didn't have to worry about rereading the first two books and remembering what was going on. It was easier to get into, and I found that when things did come up from the first or the second book rather, it did ring a bell, because I had they had the context there that made it easier for me. I really liked Nicola's character. I thought Mary Robinette Kowal was doing some interesting bits of representation with her. I liked her relationship with her husband and the way it was different to Elma and Nathaniel's relationship. And on the whole, I just thought I read it super fast. It's not the smallest book, it is 400 pages or so, but it just went by very quickly. Enjoyed it a lot.
Hang on, I can tell you what the page count is, because we were having this discussion today
in chat. Yeah.
It's in the printed copy that I have. The actual story finishes at 5:35.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so someone else got 544 for this book, 431 for the first, 384 for the second, and 544 for this one. So it's quite a chunk bigger.
She did mention in the acknowledgements that it was Brandon Sanderson's fault that her book was long.
I laughed my head off.
I was happy with that. I think anyway, no, we haven't got there yet. We can talk about pacing later.
It was long, but I think it didn't seem long.
It didn't feel long.
It moved.
No.
It moved.
Sorry, never mind. I'll come
sorry,
back to
Elizabeth.
that.
We all interrupted you. We thought you were done, but
no,
sorry.
No, it's not that. It's just that I'm aware Mel still hasn't given her.
Yes, I was just going to say. Okay, Mel.
I found this book incredibly stressful, and I did not read it fast because of that reason. I have been having nightmares about this book all week. So it's 4.5 stars because it is incredibly well written, and none of this is the fault of the book. In fact, it's probably to the book's credit that it was so difficult for me. But oh my god. No, it's why are you still reading? And I'm because it's good. No, I had a really hard time with it. I think that, like always, Mary Robinette always writes very nuanced stories, and that nuance and her real consideration and thoughtfulness of how she writes things is part of why it makes it stressful for me. Because she does write things that are so incredibly real feeling. And it's just a little bit much sometimes. So I was struggling. I think that given current mindsets and things at the moment for myself was probably part of it. So I can't blame Mary Robinette entirely. But yeah, I struggled so much.
The whole pandemic story arc going on in there that when she was writing it,
that was not the bit that was bothering me. That was not it. But we'll get into the things later, I'm sure. But yeah, otherwise, exceptional story. Well done, Mary Robinette.
Cool. All right. Well, everyone agrees it was a great book, so thank you for coming tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. And
Hi, everybody.
That's usually how it goes when everyone loves it, right?
Well, we'll see.
So I had one thing I wanted to lead with, but first I'll come back to Elizabeth because you had something you were going to pop in there with.
Oh, I was just going to say it is a long book, but the chapters are quite short. And so I think that helps. It kind of helps in some ways and not in others, because the short chapters mean it's really easy to put down whenever you want. But it keeps the pacing reasonable.
Yeah, I find the opposite. I could just do one more chapter. The chapter's not that long. I can just do one more. It'll be okay.
Well,
I don't need to go to bed yet.
Yeah, there's also that nice, on the audiobook at least, you get this nice, you go from Nicole's head into a newsreel effectively and then back out again. So there's just kind of like this
good at doing a newsreel
flow to it, which is kind of, you feel this rhythm, and it's kind of like, so I kind of go, sometimes it's a good place to stop, but also go, okay, we're on this, okay, this is what's happening.
I re-listened to the first two books the third time around. So when I knew that David wanted to do the audiobook, I was like, okay, well, I've got some time. I'll just burn through the other two books just so I can really think about how they lined up things and try and look at it from the perspective of when everything kind of goes dark, what was happening on the space, on the ship versus the colony. Because
I was so happy. What did you find? Because I wanted to do that. And then I still
I'll come to that in a second. But that meant that I went through the first book again, and I was sitting there going, this is not because I've reread the first or re-listened to the first book a few times as well, usually to share with other people, because I have a lot of pilot friends, and I have a couple of Jewish pilots. So I'm like, please listen to this and tell me what you think. And females too. So I'm like, please tell me. And but it's the first book, the first half of that book, or the first 2/3 is really slow feeling. It's a tiny book in comparison, and it feels like it takes much longer to get through because of how heavy everything is. Whereas this one, like in the first one, she's trying to give you all of the information about what's going on, and she's trying to spoon feed you or not really spoon feed you, but educate you on some pretty detailed, pretty technical stuff that not everyone's going to know. Whereas this one, that's not what we're concerned about. We are concerned about what's happening like on the moon, and we're also concerned about Nicole and what she's trying to do. So if nothing else, we're busy watching Nicole navigate as an older woman in a whole a workplace that she's not being necessarily treated fairly, and for a variety of reasons. So there's plenty of it's stuff that we sort of already understand. So I felt like it went a lot faster, even though it was so much longer. Like I felt like the amount of brain power it took me to get through the first book in this book was the same. Or no, sorry, this one was less, even though it was longer. So yeah. Anyway, we were talking about pacing, so that was my bit.
No, that's good. I was just going to say, in terms of being able to put it up, pick it up and put it back down whenever you want with the chapters, I found I would pick it up at the start of the train trip and put it down at the end of the train trip. That was very easy to do.
I say that, and yet I must confess, I read 4/5 of the book in one day.
My gauge is always
professional reader.
Hello, listeners. Elizabeth can get through a Brandon Sanderson book in 2 days if she wants.
She does it. This is her profession. This is what she does for a living, right? So just to be experienced.
Awesome. What are we? 8:30. We're doing very good. So I was going like I said on the chat. I'm not super great at running these, but I did have a few thoughts on things. And one of the things, I wanted to jump right to the very end of the book, and in the epilogue. Now there was a bit of a theme of astronauts kind of getting to the end of their astronaut careers and deciding to turn to politics, and obviously that's happened in a big way for Nicole. Did anyone see that coming, either in terms of career generally or to that specific position? I should say spoilers are all go.
Too late.
So.
I saw it coming that she would go into politics earlier on, because you could see that she was sort of helping her husband with stuff that I was like, she knows this shit as well as he does, if not better.
Yeah.
But I didn't think they'd go straight to now she's the president.
Apparently in 2 years. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
It's like she just picked up his race when she got back.
Yeah. That, which kind of makes sense, and that kind of actually from that point of view.
Well, she even said she used him as one of her major parts of her platform. So she rode that coattail to get into the position.
Yeah.
I just meant more from the party's point of view. Like, to get to there, you usually have to have a career behind you, but that's okay. I mean, the author can take liberties, do not get me wrong.
Well, in America it's actually illegal to just run straight for president. You don't actually have to be
that's true, and if she has enough cash behind her, she can.
The only thing you have to be is you have to be birth, right? Citizen by birth. That's the only requirement. However, I was so I had the same thoughts, Sarah, where I was like, that seems awfully convenient. But then I stopped and thought about it. Most of the politicians died in DC in the first book.
Yeah.
So no one has a career in politics. They're going to have to just take what they can get to some extent. Yeah. I did see the thing with Eugene, but I didn't necessarily pick up that she's gonna be president. I thought she might be a senator or something.
I thought senator. I did think senator.
Between Earth and the Moon, but I saw Eugene coming as soon as he picked up being the interim lunar magistrate, whatever they called him, LGA.
He was the mayor. Oh, the LGA. Yeah.
Yeah, when he took over for Frisk, whatever his name is.
Frisk. Yeah. Frisk.
They say
Frisch.
Mr. Frisch.
I don't know how it was spelled because I didn't. I do
because I'll get back to this. I'll tell you why I know how to spell his fucking name, even though I did the audiobook.
But yes, like when Eugene took over for him, I was like, oh, he's going to stay, and that's quite nice that he's going to stay. I can see that and that makes sense. But yeah.
Plus, actually, before we move on, anyway. That could make it more likely that we will get a book from Myrtle's perspective, because then there'll be like our characters on the moon, whereas Nicole is now on Earth, so and is unlikely to be elsewhere for some time. So
But I think the next book is supposed to be actually on Mars, though. I am looking forward to it because there's apparently a lot of discussion around colonialism and whether or not that gets brought to the Mars colony. Yeah.
That's why I was kind of hoping for a Helen perspective, because I thought Helen's someone who we haven't heard from and she could go anywhere. So I thought maybe Helen could be kind of cool to hear from, because she could end up on Mars, you know.
But going back to the epilogue, I did find it a leap in some respects, because like it makes sense to wrap up the main book at the resolution of the mystery if you get it, but then it was a jump to the epilogue. But thinking about this book in relation, this series in relation to time, it makes sense. And like who knows, like we could even do the same thing where we get like a book that we'll get books that cover that period where she's running for president and becoming the president. So presumably some of that will cross over into the books that fill those gaps.
I would like that, because one of the things that I was thinking about was like some of the things obviously between our universe and this universe are quite parallel, and others diverge, obviously. But one of the things is the way society treats women and people of color. That's all very similar, obviously. And I was wondering if it was too much of a stretch in the book for her to, I mean, we had the first Black US president, in 2008. So it was a long time. We still haven't had a woman president of the United States, and this is now 1965, I think, is the epilogue. So I wasn't sure, and that's kind of what I'm hoping that a book in the middle there might address, is how society has like kind of
it's
gotten
almost
to
like
that point.
Because I did consider this, but at the same time they've had to speed everything up, including innovation, because of the threat that's facing them. The fact is that in reality women didn't become astronauts until the frickin' 80s in the US space program. That is the just very sadly very sexist fact. Whereas
programs, they did have a program for them, they just weren't allowed to actually go up. They trained them because they were hoping it would keep everyone quiet. But
because they also wouldn't let them become test pilots. So there was like, you had to have this prerequisite, which then kind of, it's exactly what Elma points out, which I know this is where the author's research came from. It was this thing. And so when they were talking about it, she's like, you're not going to have enough. Elma makes this case in the first book. You're not going to have enough people to do this. You're going to have to use the women to fight this fight, which I think has put, my take is that in this particular world, things are definitely speeding up and people are becoming a lot more aware of socio-political and economic and classist problems.
Like,
which is
true.
great. Whereas it's easier to sweep that stuff under the carpet unless you have, you're forced to take a cold, hard look at things.
I think too. Sorry, Elizabeth, you go.
I was just going to say that's true to a degree, but like there is still like a lot of sexism and racism present in this world. Like we see it.
I'm not saying it's not there, but I'm just saying that they're getting these spotlights, which there were spotlights at the time, because I know the Vietnam War was a big thing that started, in 1969. Because when's this book set? 65?
The epilogue's in 65, but the rest of the books are 2 years earlier.
Yeah. So it's interesting, but of course, this isn't a real world. She's just trying to do the best she can.
No, and it's more that like all the technological things are all obviously very advanced, like, and that happens out of necessity, but societal change doesn't normally happen at that quick of a rate. So it's like I'd like to see them kind of talk about why, I say they, the author, I'd like to see why it's gotten to that point. I think that'd be really interesting to see.
I think she hints. I think she hinted it because she talks about, like, one of the big things is like, which, the Earth Firsters and Eugene says, I get this. We're spending all this money and we're not actually helping people, because all we're really doing is helping like this part of society. There's people starving in the eastern states, and I think that's when with New Orleans and stuff, like with Someone Help Me Katrina and stuff, that was shining a light on like the poverty that was kind of it was like, oh, there's a disaster and these people were already having a tough time. What the hell, So sorry, I interrupted a whole lot of people.
My theory is that because she spent if you go back and you have a look at the news articles that are talking about Nicole on the moon, she is written as such a savior, light, and it's helping people on the moon who had polio, who couldn't move. Like, remember there was a blackout and she basically looked after all of the women that were in the women's ward who couldn't move, and ended up getting electrocuted and still survived. So as the Americans
wasn't electrocuted.
Well, she did get electrocuted. She got shocked.
A demagogue to their leaders. So that's my thing. That's my theory, is that actually when she came back, she basically, yes, she did take over. Like she kind of went on her husband's coattails to a certain extent, but she would have had 2 years or up to, well, however long it was, a year or something on the moon, of all of this just like newsreel after newsreel of how amazing and thoughtful she was about helping the underdog, that she would have brought into that as well. And then also she's riding on the coattails of the Lady Astronaut, who's not available because Lady Astronaut is going to Mars to work to do the colony on Mars. She's not running. So you've got Nicole, who is the closest thing to a Lady Astronaut, who knows the Lady Astronaut. So she's kind of like, everyone's like, oh, you're our connection to the Lady Astronaut. And also clearly you will take care of the underdog.
I was going to say the same thing, that all those news articles were like really shining, like making her look real good and putting everything in a really, like, I was worried every time one of those news things would come up that it'd make her look bad, and then it would reflect badly on her husband and he would be having, but every one it was like, how great she is, she did this, and she
was a bit quote, I can't remember the character from the Pat. Who's the character from the Pat Rothfuss novel? Quoth? Someone help me.
Yeah.
It was like, Quoth is so amazing. He can do this and he can do that. And it's like every time that newsreel is like, and Nicole, Governor Morgan's wife, saved all those people, and Governor Morgan was out doing them, diffusing bombs. It's like, all right.
So getting the media on your side, I think, makes a big difference. And it would have, and I think this is why the society was more primed to be able to elect a woman, was because they started, that the necessity of putting women into space then shone a light on how competent that they were, that it changed the view of society quicker than it has here, because women weren't given that opportunity.
I don't entirely agree with that. I feel like it's leveraging the exceptional woman trope idea. Like they're saying, it's not fixing the essential racism of the society. It's just that this one woman is competent.
I agree, but that's of course the only woman who an American population is going to elect as president is the most exceptional woman. It would be the I Love Lucy of her genre, like of her at that time.
I noticed that even in the very last news report, they still made mention of what she was wearing.
Oh yeah.
I did notice that every news report, even in the funeral, what was she wearing? And I was like, this is so, I remember being like, this is so friggin' true though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they did the same thing for Myrtle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it still happens today. Like we think, you know, the things have changed, but like you still have women on the red carpet are interviewed about what they're wearing, and men are interviewed about what the movie they were in was, or you know, something else. They don't ask the men, well, who are you?
Unless you're Billy Porter.
Yes.
Yeah.
The comment I was making before about the audiobook. So that was I enjoyed the audiobook. I did think that Mary was really, really good at the newsreel part, like that she had that newsreel voice down pat. She wasn't great with English accents, I thought.
She could not do a South African accent to save herself.
But the thing that made
sorry, Mary, I'm sorry.
As an audiobook listener, was like, here's a fucking coded letter. And we're not going to tell you what the answer of the code is. So I'm sitting there listening, writing down the letters of the first word of every.
It's in the app.
Because I was writing down.
You read it in the app. Look, you can actually open it in the app so that you can do it from the app.
Hang on.
Yeah, if you go to the chapters list, it's at the very top.
No way.
Really?
Hang on.
I didn't.
My phone's upstairs, but I was the same thing. And I remember thinking, Kirsten, because I was out and about when that first happened, I was like, God damn it, on this re-listen, I was going to sit there and write them all down this time.
I had a little notebook. I was like, right, stop. I was cooking dinner and I stopped what I was doing. I came in here. I got out a pen and paper and I was writing down the letter.
Yeah, I did think.
I need to know what this thing says.
I did think
that's
for
how
one
I
of them,
knew
though.
how to spell Fish's name, because it was in the letter.
Oh, hilarious. Hilarious.
Minds have been blown.
Yes, because I just didn't think that they would. Yeah,
there's nothing in that. Oh, accompanying PDF. Okay, no, I did not see
That
that.
must have been it. I missed it. Okay.
yeah.
Sorry, my app prompted me twice to go look for it, so I went look
mine
for it.
didn't.
Mine did. And
I
I listened twice.
The thing that did get me about the newsreel, so I love how Mary Robinette Kowal narrates books, even though, she's not, there are certain accents, don't just go with it, roll with it, don't think too hard. But
I tried.
The news broadcasters, like the announcers, we tend, when we were listening to it the third time, we tend to listen in bed, right? Like when you're going to sleep sort of thing, like chilling out at night and stuff. And I would be almost asleep and the next chapter would start and the announcement is just a couple of, like, it's louder than the normal. So I would sure go
breaking news from Illinois.
It kept happening and I was just like,
Man, I wish I knew that these things were on here and I wouldn't have been like listening and then I had to pause and then go back because I missed one.
Sorry. Well, actually, I probably wouldn't have been able to tell you soon enough because I only listened to it this week. So,
But now
Matt, what else did you have in your list? What's your discussion?
Oh, I don't have a list. But the other thing I was thinking about, anytime there's a mystery, I like to get people's thoughts on, how did you guess? Were you right? Did you think anything was a red herring that wasn't? Those kind of things. So I don't think it was too obscure.
I think actually that's what I liked about it though, Matt. This time I thought was really interesting was that because I spent most of the time looking for the least obvious one, because in most mysteries that's how it works. It's not the people that they're actually pointing at. It's this person that you didn't think it was, or something along those lines. So I was expecting that. What I really liked about this was instead it was like a true mystery where you had your crime suspects and these people who you thought were quite possibly involved, and it was one of those people, and it's just that it took time to whittle down to figure it out.
And it was the most obvious, and it was like what I also liked was sometimes the most obvious suspect is the perpetrator, because it all came back to that landing the rocket. Was it a rocket? I don't know. Landing the ship. And the fact was like he was piloting it, and Eugene said you could have faked that because it wasn't doing that when I was in the pilot, and I remember, like, I didn't really know the first time. Also, I just kind of wanted to just let the story waft over me, but the second time I'm going, yeah, it's there, clue right there, boom, she set it up, paid it off later, and I
think the biggest
beautiful
red herring was the polio itself, because when he got polio, it was like, oh, maybe it isn't him, because if they set up the whole polio thing, he would have vaccinated himself before he went, and it wouldn't have been him. But the whole polio thing was like, whoops. That wasn't even on purpose. That just happened to happen. So that was the thing that really threw me off, because that was what made me think, no, it wouldn't be Kurt, because why would he have let himself get polio then?
Exactly. That was the one thing that got me. I'm like, why would you not prepare for that as a possibility?
Like polio's like a disease that you recover from and then you go back to normal. Like, he's now, like, it's not something you would think someone would just let happen to themselves. And because I was so convinced that was engineered by them, not that it was just
an accident. I was still convinced almost till the end that there was going to be a third, like another co-conspirator, and it was going to be Frisch. I was like, no, okay.
I even wrote a note about that I was like, I know that I suspect Frisch purely because he's a dick.
Yeah.
I still suspect Frisch.
Yeah. It's like he's a shithead to Nicole. He's gotta burn. He's gotta burn. He's a shithead to Nicole.
Look, I think being so severely poisoned is like punishment enough on that front.
Actually, I was wondering at one point, like when it came up that he had been poisoned, I was like, are they trying to get rid of him because he knew too much and he was going to defect? Like, I did wonder that, because I was very sure that it was more than one person running around and causing all the problems. And I had picked out Birgit. I was pretty certain about Birgit, but I wasn't sure yet about Kurt, and I wasn't sure about Frisch. And so I was like, oh, maybe he was originally helping, and like he was going to defect. He grew a heart or something, and he was going to defect, and they were trying to get rid of him.
Yeah, I the only thing I think now, having listened to it, is because Kurt said, I'm not going to give anybody else up. So I wasn't sure by the end of it if they had, if there was anybody else, because I remember thinking, well, they got Birgit because he had recruited her because he needed someone in comms. It didn't seem like Mr. Ski Man was involved. It was another person he recruited, but I did wonder, was there anybody else, or was it just him and he's just very good at what he does and recruiting because I was also like, why would you need to recruit people if you had a co-conspirator? But I wasn't sure if he was.
It was maybe that there were more people, but it was because they've been rotated out. So I was thinking it might have been on the roster, but they weren't there right then.
Yeah. Or it was one of those things. So I was going to say it was one of those things that Nicole said about feeding just enough truth mixed with the lies, so making her think. Like, I just realized that he was probably trying to make her think that were others, but then maybe there wasn't. Sorry, Mel.
I thought that perhaps he was referring to other members of the group on the ground, as opposed to people on the moon.
Yeah, because obviously there was some given like the things that happened on Earth, like the poisoning of Nathaniel and the assassination of Kenneth.
Yeah, and there were definitely more people like in the ICA, like that were moles in the ICA itself.
Sending up the bad code and stuff.
I think like it's one of those things where if they can recruit other people, it can be super useful for them. But like any kind of conspiracy, the more people you have, the bigger the risk that it's gonna blow up in your face. So it's like that balancing act of it could be really good to help me achieve my ends, but also there's more chance for it to go wrong.
And that's why it was clever that he really recruited people without really recruiting them. Like, he was getting them to do the things he wanted them to do under a pretext of something else. Like, in an affair, so just help me out with this thing. But
Nicole's previous career as a spy, that was new information for this book, right? We hadn't heard that before. Yeah. Okay, cool.
I love that reveal. I love that reveal of how we were talking about Twist finishing school the whole way through. And then we get this discussion with Eugene, and it turns out that No, actually, it's two different Swiss finishing schools. And like, so there were different times. So then like after that, the next time I read it, I was like, which one is she talking about in this situation when she says finishing school isn't going to help me here?
One of them's a Swiss finishing school, and the other one's a Swiss finishing school.
Yeah.
I admit that kind of gave me Gal Carriger vibes.
Yeah, I think the same. Yeah,
I said it gave me Gail Carriger vibes because one of her steampunk series is about a finishing school for young women where they train as spies.
I read that one.
And
that was the etiquette and espionage one, right? Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I haven't actually read it, but I still got like those vibes, and it was just funny to me.
Cool. I got Black Widow vibes a bit now on this thing, because I was like, now I've just rewatched that scene where she's being trained at a Russian finishing school.
Especially the bit where she goes in to interrogate him after Kenneth got shot, and she's like unscrewing the thing from the chair.
Didn't say anything about improvised weapons.
Yeah. You didn't say I couldn't lock the door. That was great. That was great.
I didn't know which way that was going to go, whether she was going to actually lose it or not.
I think the second time round, I didn't think she would lose it. I thought she was very much going, I need to really intimidate and make him like, I just thought she was like, I'm using all my freaking training to get to this guy. And by the first time round, I was like, so yeah. Sorry, Matt.
No, I was going to say I will have to pop in and tell Xander to stop reading in a second. But I was just going to say one of the things I had another one of those fly when they were like, oh, Kansas City's gone off the air. I was like, has someone like nuked the entire city? Like, is it actually wiped out? But no, it was just like no power. But like, I was like, oh, okay, that's upping the stakes for the Earth Firsters, but no.
And I couldn't remember that part. Bobby, you might be able to give us some more insight. What was going on the Mars trip at that point? Because I vaguely remember them losing contact with Earth for a while, and then they they had the thing with like pointing a reply going, oh yeah, it's all sorted now.
Yeah,
it
was a surprise to them. So they didn't know that that Earth had gone dark. Because there was already an issue with the radio antenna because they were down to one ship at that point because of the issues with the second death of the crew. So she found out. I don't remember her name. The woman had
Violet. The comms person on the ship, right?
The one who did the cross stitch. I remember she did cross stitch while she was sitting at the radio. She had to like reorient the antenna, and that's when she discovered that it wasn't just the antenna that was the problem, the direction of the antenna. It was the fact that they couldn't even get a hold of Earth. And it's towards the end of the Mars book because it's the whole like everyone having a discussion in the kitchen. It happened just before that because when they all have the discussion in the kitchen and Elma and whatever his name is, Stetson have their little like come to Jesus moment where they finally decide that they can actually work together in front of everyone else, that they can do that. That was just after they finally got connection back to Earth.
Right, because that's where Stetson had discovered his wife had died. Sorry, spoilers for the other books too.
Just before we move on from that, his wife had polio, right? She was in an iron lung.
Yeah, she was in an iron lung.
Yeah.
Cool. So without the electricity, the iron lung couldn't work, and she passed away.
Because the electricity was out for days, and they only had enough in the generator to keep it going for about 12 hours or something. Yeah.
Did everyone read or listen to the bit about the polio vaccine stuff in the history part?
Fascinating. And that decision influencing the way she took fascinating. Loved it.
I would just like to say at this point, 96 bags, poop on the moon, 96 bags. Sorry, was necessary.
Yeah, so you can there might be some behind me here, I'm not sure. But...
that one over there, I think that's
So
Yeah.
yep.
Very funny. Very funny.
I was just going to say, if anyone has something that they would like to bring up and discuss, please do so while I go disappear for a couple of minutes, and I'll be right back.
Sure.
I want to know what Mel was talking about, because you apparently had a couple of things you wanted to talk about. Mel.
Oh, it's not so much that I want to talk about them. They're just things that were stressing me out.
Tell us.
Okay, three things. One of them was just basically the mystery and the spying and all of that sort of stuff in general. That was just stressful. The political situation I found particularly pertinent and difficult to read. And the anorexia.
Yeah.
I think that's the one major plot point that we haven't really talked about yet. Actually.
Yeah, I figured we'd get to it, but I wanted to see if that was something, like, one, to give Mel, if that was the thing, if you wanted to not be part of this discussion, you might not want to be.
It's not so much that. It's just more along the lines of, I found it triggery because I think I have eating problems on the other side of the spectrum. And this was just a constant reminder. And it was just like, oh, food issues, and it did not stop.
Yeah, I found that was interesting too, because I would say I'm the same. I'm more of an overeater than an undereater, but I have a friend who is probably leaning towards the other side, and especially when she had some issues. I'm trying not to go into too much detail because we're on an online chat, but she had some issues in her personal life, and she really sort of stopped eating. And I actually found this book was really good for me to help me understand how she was feeling at the time, because I remember her saying stuff like, I would put food in my mouth, but I couldn't swallow it. And that was the same kind of thing that Nicole was going through. Like, she would know that she should be eating, and she would try to eat, and it would feel awful in her mouth, and she couldn't swallow, and she'd spit it into the thing and put it back in her pocket. And I thought it was really well written, the way that she tackled that issue, because it really made me understand how she was feeling, even though I sort of went, well, that would never be me, because if I'm stressed out, I just eat more. But but I see,
and I was thinking it in reverse, because, like, for me, it's the opposite. I shouldn't eat anymore. I should just stop, and yet I don't stop.
Yeah, it's the same. I'm the same. Like,
and I was just like,
and I comfort eat, and when I'm stressed out, I eat, and
Yeah. Whereas for me, I resonated with that. I am so anxious that I feel nauseous all the time. Like, I've been that person in grief. I've been that person with anxiety. So that resonated with me. It just, that whole, and, the other thing that I thought she did really well, and I was also keenly aware that she didn't want to go into it too much, because she didn't want to become a thing that people model and go, because I know that can be at a risk of that.
That at the end, in the end.
And I noted that because I'd heard that the second time. I was like, it was that control thing, which is, it's not necessarily about that. It's about everything in my life is out of control. I have to control something. And I thought what I really appreciated was actually the piece with Nathaniel around that, because he's also someone where everything is out of control. So this is the one thing that he kind of it can exercise something over, even if it's not in a healthy way. So everyone's different, and that's the thing. Everyone's different. Everyone deals with grief, anxiety, depression differently.
I find it fascinating though, the way that it's described as something they can control, and yet they're not controlling it, because
exactly.
Like, that's the thing. Like, it's an illusion that's not actually real, because they're not actually in control of it. In fact,
they feel in control because it's a choice they're making in the beginning. So, like, as someone who supports someone who has an eating difficulty, that very much manifests like this. Like a lot of that narration around things like after a while, it started as being something she could control, because it was an active choice she was getting to make and being allowed to make effectively, because no one would look twice at her if she wasn't eating too much. She'd just go, I shouldn't, my weight, or whatever. Like, that's, people just will accept that if you're a woman or if you're female. And but then afterwards, like, it's when you get into the pattern of it that's when it becomes a problem. And then for her, she was like, I had it under control. I was able to actually manage this mental illness for myself. And then I was triggered by something which caused me to relapse, because it's an illness. It's not just some people do it for a variety of reasons, but like at that point, it's an actual like repetitive, like ingrained pattern of behavior that turns into mental illness. So, but I liked the discussion that she had where she had all of her friends who were like, we want to help. And so they're all basically doing what she told them to do, but they were all doing it at once. And she's like, you're making it worse.
Yeah.
I need like one of you can do this. The rest of you you're stressing me out and you're making it worse. I'm more likely to continue this behavior. Yeah.
And she's like, she feels like everyone's looking at her and watching her when she's eating, because they care, that they want her to eat because they know it's important. But for her, it's like, everyone watching me eat makes eating even harder than it already was.
Yeah. And for her at that point, she would like, everyone probably felt like they needed to, because her bones were brittle. Like she had was osteoporosis because of it.
Yeah. I found it like that end bit where they didn't have the cottage cheese and they brought out the bowl. I was like, it's congee. It's congee. It's totally congee. I know what it is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I was just having a moment this week, and I was like, oh my God, I feel so bad for Nicole. Protein shakes. They didn't have protein shakes. Like her world, like, because she was having, I got everything she talked about texture, and I totally got that. I'm like, you need something so effing palatable. Applesauce can't be. I mean, gosh, that must be so hard. All the sweetness. And
American applesauce is actually not that sweet. Like proper American applesauce, like Mott's, which is the brand everyone grows up with, it's very mild. Like,
but
I was still thinking from a texture point of view.
It depends on which one.
The American one a lot more hot calorie. Like, but I was just thinking it's a lot of sugar, but it's not really protein, and it's not really.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of going. Yeah.
Like, whereas I must be the complete opposite to her, because not only like I overeat instead of undereating, but like I can't handle food that has no texture like that. Like I'm not a fan of, like I don't like congee because it's got no texture, and I don't like yogurt on its own. Like I have to have something crunchy in it. It's like the polar opposite.
But just getting back to the book, I wanted to say that I really appreciated the depiction of a character with anorexia, especially because it is so uncommon, especially in fiction. It was I really appreciated seeing that and seeing.
Actually, with it not being a major plot point of the story, it was just something that was part of it.
But also it is important to the plot because she doesn't eat much. She doesn't get poisoned or things like that. Like her choice about not having sugar with the tea means that she's not being poisoned. She didn't eat sandwiches at her house. That sort of thing means that like it contributes.
I just meant that it wasn't the focus of the plot, like as in it wasn't a story about anorexia.
What I thought was about it was that it wasn't about her, because all the depictions in fiction that I've seen of anorexia have been about how I look, like people thinking that they're fat and wanting to not eat because they were fat. And in this, that wasn't really the point. That wasn't what it was about. It was more about that, like you guys were saying, about her could be having something that she could control, and about how that when she tried to eat under a stressful situation, when she was dealing with other shit, that it made it that she lost her appetite, and then trying to eat was hard because she didn't, like, it made her feel sick to try to eat. Like, I thought that was really good, that it wasn't just, because it's often seen as like a vanity disease. Is not necessarily what it is.
This was very much linked to her like baseline of stress and anxiety and depression, like as opposed to how she thought everyone else perceived her physically.
And I thought it was also really refreshing to have a character who suffers from this mental illness, who's in their 50s, right? And has probably suffered it for 30 years, and it's just refreshing and to see in a way, because I know that the author was trying really hard not to, because it can be very difficult in these situations. So the same thing applies to suicide, for it not to become, they're trying not to glamorize it, but basically not trying to give someone a textbook who then thinks, oh, this is a way I could then, exercise this. Like, I know it's really hard sometimes to write about things and not, create a case study for someone who might be reading it. But I thought that the repercussions of some of this, it's interesting what I hadn't thought about that, but Elizabeth's right. Like there's good repercussions of this, but there's also really bad repercussions with her arm and the fact that she's grounded, right? So I thought that was really, it's sort of like, okay, the payoffs are you're still here, but then the payoff is you will never, your arm you broke it again, and you'll never be able to fly a vehicle to the extent that someone would let you. So I thought that was really good too, because you've 30 years of unfortunately not giving your body the nutrients it needed. So yeah, I thought it was really interesting. Yeah.
Kind of tying into that, something that weighs on my mind too about it is that anorexia has the highest rate of morbidity of a mental illness, like between suicide and health complications. So if you don't recover fast, you don't recover.
Yeah.
And so that kind of ties in like with the health complications that, she couldn't lift Helen up the stairs. She could barely lift herself. Like to show, the negative consequences, as Sarah was saying.
And there's a lot of the like she was noticing too, where she was like, I know I haven't eaten. This is why I can't think straight. If I had been able to eat, or if I had been able to look after myself, I would have picked up on things faster. I would have probably found Kurt faster, because we don't know, like hindsight is 2020, but there are several scenes where there has been mention that she's not eaten. It's come up because of a conversation with another character, and then she ends up in a situation where she talks about being fuzzy-headed because
Well, so for instance, she's given that big break, right, to fly, and she's, admittedly, I was like, oh man, we've all been there, we've been rushing around and trying to, but it is that question of what that, I'm just going to grab a sandwich and I'll be 2 secs, kind of thing. Like it's really interesting. She faints and misses out on that break to fly or co-pilot or whatever it was in the simulator. And
something else that you just reminded me of, Sarah, is how clever Mary Robinette is with it, because like how often do characters stop to eat in a book? They don't, right? You just kind of gloss over that mostly. And so she uses that as a way to play into this, like characters rushing around doing stuff, which is what characters do, right? But then like she gets pulled up by someone saying, have you eaten? And you realize, oh, she hasn't. It's been a while.
Yep. Yeah. And the thing is, again, Mary Robinette Kowal is very clever, because we've had 2 books which have been obsessed in a good way with food, because we all love our chocolate chess pies, right? We're all about our biscuits. So we're all like, cooking, right? So she's kind of laying this groundwork of, here are a whole lot of astronauts who are obsessed with eating and find the time to bake in a freaking mission to Mars.
Now that I think about it, with the chocolate chess pie dates back to the first book, right?
No, it was the second book.
It was the second one.
The first book was all the biscuits, I think. It was biscuits and something else.
I'm just wondering, not having read it for a long time, whether Nicole was exhibiting those symptoms in the first book.
No, you're right. So in the first book, when Nicole and Elma go and sit down at a restaurant,
do they go to lunch and have martinis?
Yeah, they go to lunch.
Yes,
and Nicole's like, you need to have a Caesar salad and a filet mignon bloody. And it wasn't until I read the third one, like the second time, and I was like, oh, that's what she's talking about. Because like she says things got bad for me. And she's like, and you haven't eaten anything. This is what you should eat, because that for her, that is her go-to when she's had a bad run. Is So she
That's
was. We
a nice little
character.
Like sometimes that character kind of trait or development can be pre-planned. Sometimes it's just a little nice happy accident. But whichever way, it was nice to see that then coming through.
I think even little things like at the beginning when she was talking about, she's standing there while her husband's doing the his speech or whatever, and she's talking about how much her feet hurt in her shoes.
Oh,
And I'm
yeah.
like, yeah. And I was at the
Yeah.
time just going, yep, I feel ya. I know how much it fucking hurts wearing high heels for a long time. But it, like, then you realize later that she's actually got arthritis in her feet from the brittle bones and everything, and that was a little foreshadowing moment as well.
Actually, when I first heard it, I didn't think that that's what it was. I thought it was because of all of the high heels that she had to wear, because women would get arthritis in their toes from all the pointy shoes that they had to wear in the 50s. Like it was a whole thing. When I was a belly dancer, like you could see a whole generation of women, particularly Egyptian women, because nightclub dancing in Egypt in the golden era, so like the 30s, 40s, and 50s, was all in heels, 4 and 5 inch heels, dancing around, and you had to be able to move your hips, but you had to be doing it on heels, and so they couldn't get their shimmy going. Like Turkish women would dance barefoot, so they could put their feet flat on the floor and get their hips moving, and Egyptian women had to go up on their toes because their bodies didn't know how to move without being in that like almost point.
Letting that cat out. I'll be like,
wow. It was
I don't know what that noise was.
I'm glad you brought it up though, because I was thinking that it's like it's not maybe not as confronting as the anorexia, and I feel like Nicole got like double whammy here. But you don't see a lot of chronic illness kind of come up in characters either, which arthritis is, and it's not necessarily something that is immediately debilitating, but it progresses often over time. It gets worse and worse, and she kind of talks a little bit about that, how it's like most of the time I can deal with it, and I have these measures to sort of like offset the pain and that kind of thing, but at some point it's going to get probably pretty bad.
Like when she's running down the hall on the moon, and where she doesn't notice and she's forgotten about her arthritis, and then she stops and her foot goes out because her mass is still the same. I'd forgotten about her arthritis. I was like, oh, she's fine, she's in like moon gravity, she'll be fine.
All I could think about is when she's running for president, probably having to wear high heels. And I was like, oh God.
I was kind of like, at that point, lady, you're in your 50s. I know those Greek and Italian old ladies, they're wearing the sensible heels. I think you're okay now.
Maybe it's time to
shorter heels.
A constitutional amendment.
Also, I liked how that did play in with the gravity element. Like Mary Robinette Kowal really kind of thought about like, what does it mean to have this in this situation? And how the lighter gravity of the moon would be a relief and that sort of thing. So
and the fact that she tied that to the polio recovering patients as well.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I enjoy about this series particularly is that that attention to detail from the science part of it, which I really enjoy. But it's never it never dominates the plot. It's just there and it's part of the story and can be used in the plot. But it's always very smart. I always enjoy those little things. It's like 1/6 gravity is still not, you're not just jumping around weightless. You still have mass. You still have some weight. And it's, people forget that. And like there's that bit where I think it was Eugene. Was it Eugene? Jumped
she said, I don't like living in 1G. This is where I live on the moon.
Jumped too high and hadn't acclimated to the lower gravity, and was like smashed his head into the like those little things.
I was like, how long were they back on Earth for? Because all I kept thinking of was Bobby from The Expanse, and she lives on Mars, right?
Yeah.
Third gravity, and she's really sick when she comes back to Earth. And I was thinking, how are you doing this, Lynn Holmes? How are you kind of okay?
She also, I think her issue was not just she had like I forget the word for the fear of open spaces. Like she was like, holy shit, sky. And because usually being under a dome, and she was like panic attack. So
right.
I do think
astronauts do take a while to kind of get used to it again.
They do. I've heard them say that. They said the bit that you don't see is that you get off and you do a lot of puking, and then you do some more puking.
And it's weeks or months of like getting back to what it's like being on Earth. But that's an interesting thing. I don't know if there's going to be like the next one is going to be kind of like the rest of the trip to, you know, Mars, like being there. But I don't know if she has a plan to continue the series beyond that or not. But that was one of the things that I thought about, is like the long-term future of humans in space. There's a lot of things to consider. Radiation, she talks about that a little bit in the end of the book, where she's talking about the research and stuff. But the things like, yes, thank you. I'm trying to think of the word. It's not acknowledgements, it's the other bit. Author's notes, thank you. Like radiation, gravity is super important. Like, you know, for having a successful gestation, like all these kind of things that, like, if the story is going to go forward, that's things that's going to have to be addressed, because you can't really have more humans, make new humans in space. It's not good. Okay, so are they going to try and go even further, or, like, you know, Mars has enough gravity to kind of get by pretty much, but then you have other issues, so those kind of challenges.
I thought something that came up as a, who knows where she's going, but it came up in this book about Earth and everyone who'll be left and trying to go into the Earth.
Yes,
and I wonder
was wondering about that.
If she'll write something about the perspective of you know, some people living in silos below the Earth, you know, that they couldn't make it.
It'll be a time with wool. No.
No, so yeah, I was wondering, because like totally
it's a backdoor
like, in the 70s that actually happened, and you ended up with a whole other species of humans that had burrowed into the Earth.
70s.
Yeah, that one, 70s.
Yeah, but that raises different issues of vitamin D and stuff, right? You know, of not having the sunshine and what that means, and but
you know,
Mel, I think it was it? Are you okay, Mel?
Yeah, I'm all right.
All right, you were just like,
yeah, sorry, I'm resting.
I'm starting to get worried.
She's resting her eyes.
Who, I think it was you when we were talking about Artemis.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Both Artemis, the book by Eddie Weir, and this one had Artemis, the base on the moon, called Artemis. Now I looked up Artemis. I could not find any correlation. Those people are into mythology. Could someone tell me what the hell's going on here?
Artemis is the goddess. Actually, the NASA base camp program for the moon.
Right, there we go.
I don't know why NASA chose that, but that is why they
Elizabeth has the answer.
Artemis is the goddess of the moon.
Yeah.
That's not what I saw when I looked it up.
No, yeah.
Well, that would explain it then.
That's and
I'm sure they said that in the book.
She's the twin sister of Apollo,
Mm-hmm.
which is why
I knew that. Yeah, okay.
you have Apollo and Artemis.
Yeah.
Look, I read a very short description, so I'm not claiming to have done a lot of research here. I finished the book at like 8:00. Hangout was at 9. I had an hour in that time. I had a big long chat with Nye, and I looked this up briefly, and I made a pina colada. Okay.
Look, it's good to get your priorities there. Yeah,
absolutely.
Speaking of the moon, it is a full moon tonight. Just in case anyone cares. And it is rising. It's looking beautiful. No. It was because I looked at it because I was in the backyard. It was still 10% to go last night. So unless it's tipped over the edge, it was still 10% to go.
Sure. My calendar in front of me tells me that the full moon was at 1:57 a.m. on Thursday morning.
Oh, well, then that's fine. The 10% must have happened between 10:30 and 1 whatever. So, you know, when I looked, it was still 10% to go.
Did anyone else go and look up the blueprints that she was talking about? Because in her author's notes, she said that NASA actually has lunar colony blueprints that you can find.
Cool. Wow.
I also I liked in the author's notes too that she said, the stuff that I don't understand is the stuff that will never fail in the book.
It was good. That was good.
Yeah.
Yes, I liked her reference to the person who helped her with the rocket landing scene.
Yeah.
He says,
You're
they're dead.
Now
they're
it's
dead.
boring.
They're dead. Now it's just boring. So funny. So I just thought that was hilarious. But yes.
Pretty funny.
It was.
96 pounds. He's on the moon. 96 pounds.
I was trying to think what else there is that. Oh yeah, and I was going to say, sorry, I do remember another repercussion of her with her, breaking her arm and all that kind of stuff. Was she couldn't get in the suit initially because the tech quite rightly said, I don't know if that's going to cause a problem, and
So, was anybody else super surprised that Mary Robinette killed off Kenneth?
Even after they said he'd been shot, I was like, he'll be still alive. He'll be alive.
No, it wasn't just me though.
And then Matt was reading it after me, and he's like, I got to the part where Kenneth got shot, and I'm like,
apparently.
I'm glad it was a text message because I was like, you won't know yet whether he's dead or not, and I'm trying not to react to your comment in any way that lets you know one
I was
way or the
convinced
other.
that it was all a fake out for quite some time.
Yeah, even like, and I'm like, and then he said he's past the part with the funeral, and I'm like, oh well, so he actually died, and he's like, did he though?
Did he? Layers upon layers of.
Bobby, was it referenced in the Faded Sky? Is it Faded Sky? It's Faded Sky.
It wasn't.
Because I couldn't remember. I was like, I know they talked about.
No, they said. In the book, in the Relentless Moon, they said that the news to the Mars mission was censored.
Yeah, it was. We knew that in the second book as well. That we knew that their stuff was being censored because Elma's husband had said we've been censoring it. Elma got really, really shitty with Nathaniel for the fact that they were censoring things, even though it was because Elma was talking about being upset by what was happening and how everyone else was upset, and so Nathaniel made the executive decision to have it censored. So there was that whole spat between the two of them about that. So yes, they didn't know.
And we also knew in this book that they didn't know about Kenneth because when Nicole was dancing with Stetson, it was mentioned, and he was surprised about something.
No, you're right. That was the conversation where she said, yeah, I know that your news was censored. Yeah, right. Remember now. Yeah.
I didn't.
So I was a bit surprised, but if you think about it from a character point of view, it's what the character needed to do to hit their all-time low and also to tip the narrative. So I was also like, just so much, just mastery there, author, Mary Robinette Kowal. There's so many syllables, I struggle.
Usually the thing they do with women, it's usually the other way around. It's normally like the woman that dies to further the man's plot, and they've twisted it around. She's twisted it around.
Two things, because I've been reading the PDF with the letters, I had noticed that there were more letters from Kenneth in later chapters because they're listed by chapter, and I didn't read them, and so I was very confused about the whole and then adding to that, I actually thought that there was a very good chance, given that Nicole wasn't going to survive the story.
I was thinking the same. I was like, she's got nothing to lose now. She's gonna, go out in the blaze.
She'll sacrifice herself somehow, or that sort of thing. And yet, in the end, she wasn't even the one that found the bomb and helped defuse it, which I was like, brilliant, stroke of genius.
I did think she maybe wasn't going to go back to Earth because in the beginning of the story there was that thing that at the presser where Kenneth told the public, oh, my wife and I will be staying here even though my wife is an astronaut, we will be staying here, and she's smiling going, really? Where was the other conversation? Because I asked to go up. I'm vying for a spot. So I actually thought she just wasn't going back to Earth. I thought she was going to stay on the moon. Instead, because she had no reason to go back.
That's what I thought too, because I was like,
I think she would have, except Eugene asked her to go.
Oh no, well yeah, she said if she was in his position, she would have sent her own butt back home, back to the Earth, because she was technically a liability. Like she wasn't healthy enough to be up on the moon. She,
asking was a courtesy.
That was it.
He was so good with her. Like he was so good with he trusted her, but he was also like, the bit where he was when she was going in to do the interrogation. I thought he handled that really well.
I honestly
Eugene was
thought
my favorite. Like, I know everybody else is like, oh, I love Nicole. Eugene was my favorite.
Especially the bit
when
Myrtle came back from the mission and
Yes!
he's like,
Private debriefing.
yeah.
Admittedly, I kind of like Eugene and Myrtle as the combo, probably the best. Like,
Yeah, I just loved it.
Yeah.
I just loved it. I just thought that was so great.
yeah.
I think actually that's another point in favor of having a novel from Myrtle's perspective is that so far we've had novels about couples and they're couples in different ways. And so
true.
I think it would be good to have a novel from Myrtle's perspective and get, their marriage as well.
I agree. I think one of the biggest things that makes me absolutely love these stories is the mature relationships that she covers in each of them. Like, the stories are enjoyable and all of that, but probably if anybody asked me what it is about these stories that make them stand out and fantastic, it's that mature relationship attitude towards and how they're each nuanced and different has been fabulous.
I was actually wanting to bring that up, so thank you, Mel. Like, Mary Robinette got so much pushback from a lot of about Elma and Nathaniel's relationship and how unrealistic it was, to the point that she has this long Twitter rant about, are you people okay? Really? You don't think that that's possible? And I liked how this relationship was quite a healthy one in a completely different way. And it showed both people supporting each other in an equal, in basically an equal marriage, even in a situation where her husband, I think, was even more tuned into the whole sexism that was going on. Like, Nathaniel had a blind spot about it, whereas Kenneth definitely got it, probably because he saw how it affected his wife's eating and how it manifested in that way. But
I liked how they had cracks too in their relationship in this one as well.
Yes,
it wasn't just all happy sailing and things.
Well, I always assumed that Elma and Nathaniel were always happy sailing because she was the happy Southern wife. So, of course, it's going to be that way because she glosses it over even with herself. She's like, well, he's my husband. I'm going to help him. Be happy.
Well, I think especially in this one though, it's because what Kenneth is wanting to do is not necessarily something that Nicole is 100% behind. Whereas I don't think Nathaniel had that kind of clash with Elma, so it was a bit different there.
But they did have different clashes.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, but also this marriage is a lot older. Nicole's 50, and I think with Nathaniel and Elma, they were in their 30s, maybe late 20s, early 30s. So certainly they were far along enough that she was having to do the math about if they wanted to have children, but she was going back and forth to Mars. They did have that conversation, so she was far enough along that way, but they were still quite young.
Yeah, I did appreciate though that Nicole referenced how icky all the rocket innuendo was, and I just cracked
up. I liked that too.
She's like, oh my God's sake. For us. I was like, thank you.
See, I loved all of that side of things, but I can appreciate that side of being icky for others outside of it. So I just didn't. I thought it was funny.
I really liked that because I was like, you're talking for me. You're like, and it's like acknowledging that because I think that there was some comment about those innuendos in the other books being like,
they
this
fit
isn't
the character,
how people
right?
talk.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, this is how they talk. Everyone else is like, no, that's kind of weird. Yeah. It's just how those two people carry.
Exactly.
That's their thing.
It's that good Southern Jewish upbringing. We can't really talk about what we're doing because that would be, not quite right.
I couldn't even hear the word vibrator without basically turning into a gigantic, blushing whatever. On the spaceship.
I was literally standing outside when I was listening to that bit.
It was so funny.
The only thing that just occurred to me though is when she talks about the vibrator, I'm like going, all I can imagine is, well, they wouldn't have been battery powered. What was this thing?
No, they would have. They had torches that were battery powered before then. So
that's true. Damn it!
I believe the first
I was in my
steampunk
kind of.
You can't have cable.
Vibrators.
Cable is fine. No, I was outside when she mentioned that.
Vibrators, everyone, it's okay.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you. Thank you for taking that Google search hit for us.
That I was outside picking beans when the vibrator thing came up, and I literally yelled out loud, "Yes!" No, I was like, what are you yelling outside yes about? I was like, oh, nothing. It's okay.
Just going back to the Kenneth and Nicole's relationship for a minute though, one of the things that I really liked about them was their non-verbal communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, both in terms of like really like specific code that they had between each other, but also like the natural kind of like body language stuff that came up as well. Both were really, really good.
Wow.
So sorry, everybody. I've opened the door several times.
The moose is just being difficult.
He's been very difficult. Moose.
I wanted to mention when it came to the race stuff, the scene that happened with the gardener and the gentleman who tried to stop him from pulling up the weeds and everything.
Yeah.
There was a quote there that I thought was quite fantastic. First of all, I thought the nuance of that scene was fabulous. Like the fact that she noticed that she was going to have to defend the white guy to the black guy, and the nuance behind all of that and how to deal with it was really, really well done. In her awareness of the situation and everything. But the quote that came out of it from Nicole was, although it was kind of from Kenneth really, trust was earned by actions. Our collective actions meant that there were centuries of work to be done to prove ourselves trustworthy. Such a good quote.
Yeah.
We love her. She really should just come be part of book club. She would fit right in.
She's so close to came to the book club when
Yeah.
Never mind.
If anyone would like to know, because I have done a bit of quick research.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, appreciate you.
So in the 60s, there wasn't a lot of choice for vibrators, but battery powered really wasn't a thing at the time. So they were mains powered, and they were more of like the wand style didn't come out till the 70s. So they're more of like the gun style, like you might see in a lot of those ads on social stuff. It's like the massage gun type thing, where it's like the head oscillates kind of like in and out direction like that. And they were definitely not advertised as
marketed.
They were
more for penetration.
It was
the personal massager.
Yes, exactly. So there you go. So she would have had to find a socket somewhere.
But I would imagine, I find it very easy to believe that given all the other stuff that they would have had to figure or design to be battery operated, by that point they probably would have figured it out that they needed one for the spaceship that was battery operated, or maybe just rechargeable. Maybe they just jumped right over it and made it rechargeable batteries.
Yeah, it is, after all, not an exact correlation to our world.
Yeah, things are definitely...
They did have innovation moving very quickly.
In fact, I'll be curious to see, because I would like whether, I didn't notice, but were there any like history parts that came up that correlated to what it was going on at the time? Or
I'm sure there was at least an Aldrin mentioned.
Aldrin, Armstrong.
Armstrong and all that. Old.
Yeah, but hang on.
And Ella Fitzgerald.
Lovell was also on there. So that they had like Apollo astronauts who turned up.
Oh, you mean historical
earlier.
events rather than people?
Yeah. I meant historical events, but just backing up to Aldrin and Armstrong, the other person that they had with them as the nav, I think, was El Motar, which is Amal El Motar of This Is How You Lose Time War.
Oh,
you're kidding.
Not kidding.
Really?
That was a definite reference there.
Huh.
Because I
wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
I think Amal El Matar was a guest for Writing Excuses, which is the podcast that Mary Robinette Kowal does with Brandon Sanderson and a couple of others. So I saw that and I was just so delighted, especially since they stuck Amal with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. It just
that is so
made me
cool.
smile.
That is so cool. Oh, I love that. That's so cool.
But I meant like historical events. Like I'm wondering, because like this is an alternate history. So how far have we diverged from our timeline?
They referenced Dr. King. Oh, they've referenced Dr.
That's
King.
true, they did.
Yep.
And I think they referenced, was it Korea? Like someone had flown in Korea, like one mission or something, and then
So Kurt. That was Kurt. Kurt was out for one mission, and then the meteor happens and he came back.
The Korean War was just before the meteor hit originally.
Yeah.
So
like,
that part would have been
started or something.
Yeah.
She did mention in the author's notes of one of these three books, I do not remember which one it was, Mary Robinette does mention that some of the events, like the natural disasters and things like that, are actually taken from news headlines from the time, and she's just tweaked them slightly. I'm trying to find it because I know it also came up in an interview that she gave at some point, but it's in one of the author's notes. I just don't think it's this book, but I imagine it's the same. So things like the natural disasters that happened.
Because there were quite a few in this one as well.
Yeah, there were.
Yeah.
There were.
So, and I'm interested to kind of see like how things go in the books going forward, like how much we diverge and what might be ahead is interesting for me to think about.
I'm actually mostly wondering how much she's going to keep the original text, The Lady Astronaut from Mars, as the end point versus deciding that, you know what, being tied to that endpoint might be too hard and she might let herself go off in a different direction from that.
I don't remember what the endpoint that was. I just remember I cried when I read the
Let's just say that between that story and this one, you can end up really hating Elma.
Oh no, that I believe. But I think it was that what I cried about was what happened in the beginning of that little short story, not because I don't remember how it ended. Now I'm gonna have to go read it.
I don't think I read that.
I don't think it was that long that there was much other than what happened.
No, it was what sent her at the beginning of the story. Unless I'm mixing it up with another one of the other short stories.
Yeah, maybe because that story is quite short.
Yeah.
No, it was.
I don't want to say
in the beginning of the book, right? Like both her and Nathaniel, both Elma and Nathaniel at the beginning of that story have a very important conversation, right?
Yeah, but that's kind of the point of what happens at the end. Like nothing.
No, then that means that I did read this one. That's what made me cry. Anyway, I just don't remember what it was. I don't remember how it ended. I probably blocked it out. Who knows?
Some I want to read. I don't think I actually got around to.
I haven't read it. I just.
Is that the one in between the original short story?
This is the original short story I'm talking about.
I think I've read that.
It's the one that's called The Lady Astronaut of Mars.
And it's like it's like at the end of
down.
I've read that. I don't remember, as you said, it's really short. I don't really remember.
Oh, I remember. It's burned into my brain.
I have to have a look on my Kindle.
We'll go reread it again.
Or it's available on tour or something, right?
I ran through the library, so
because it's really short. I remember
there's some stuff on tour. I'm not sure if this one
I'm pretty sure it's probably available on tour because it was
if you check Goodreads, they'll have a link.
They will.
On tour.
Yeah, I'll go see if I can find it.
I am conscious that for some of us, we're not in daylight savings time, and that it is a little bit later other places. So anyone, I'm not putting an end to it just yet, but does anyone have more that they'd like to discuss? Or are we talked out?
I think we're talked out, Matt. It's good. Wrap us up.
Awesome. All right. Well, there we go. Thank you for coming along. If you, no, you wouldn't be coming along. You'll be watching this post the event. If you're one of those people who do that, I don't know anyone who does, but maybe you exist. If you do, hello. This has been our hangout for the Relentless Moon. There it is again, flickering in and out. Thank you for joining us. Next month, I believe it is Bobby's pick. Is that correct from memory?
Yep.
And it is, oh God, don't tell me. 'cause
Rosewater by Taddy Thompson.
Thank you, because I keep looking at it to see if it's actually gone on special yet.
Not to be confused with the other one that takes place in Iraq. Anyway, yeah, not that one.
Yep. So yes, please join us again in around about a month's time when we'll be talking about that book.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, and good night. Bye.